Okay, we will be going live in about 1 minute. 1 minute.
What do you see when you imagine the future? When we picture what's to come, we often think of innovations that take us to new heights. Some of them are already here, and every day, thousands more make the jump from our imagination into reality. Nowhere is this more evident than here in Japan. Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies are fundamentally transforming the way we do things. All this is happening so fast, and we must do more than just keep up. These emerging technologies open up boundless possibilities of what our future could look like. Technology is not a simple solution to our problems. It poses questions that we need to answer and guidelines we need to write together. That's why we're all here. A global event hosted by Japan that brings together the world's leading voices across disciplines and geographies. How technology will shape our tomorrow depends on the choices we make today. And that starts now.
It has been 1 year since the COVID-19 pandemic has enabled hundreds of millions of people to go online more than before. But the existing gaps and inequalities have been more exposed and exacerbated. 47% of people worldwide are not using the internet, and the cost of available broadband exceeds affordability targets in 50% of developed countries. Welcome to the session closing the digital divide at the Global Technology Governance Summit 2021. We will be exploring the most promising innovations and get together for a new understanding of the work that needs to be done moving forward. The session will be a milestone in the efforts of the Edison Alliance, a World Economic Forum initiative to mobilize a global movement to prioritize digital inclusion as foundational to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. My name is Sasha Vakulina, and I'm moderating this session, and it's my great pleasure to introduce you our speakers. As Iswaran, Minister for Communications and Information, Minister in charge of Trade Relations of Singapore, Vinita Sethi, Senior Vice President and Chief Public Affairs Officer, Polo Hospitals Enterprise, India, and Bokar Bar, Chief Executive Officer, Samana Telecommunications Council. You can also join us and make your comments or questions on Twitter using the hashtags for the summit and for WEF hashtag. Of course, we're going to be here keeping an eye on your comments and what you have to say on closing that digital divide. And to start this session, I would like to ask all speakers to set the scene with the opening remarks addressing this question: how can we collectively drive the systemic transformation needed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and ensure all citizens participate in the digital economy? Minister Iswaran.
Thank you very much, Sasha. And let me first say that I'm very happy to be joining this panel, addressing this very pertinent subject of the global challenge of a digital divide. I think, as you've already explained, COVID-19 has really brought home the significance of digital technologies, not just from the point of view of strengthening our resilience in the battle against the pandemic, but also as the foundation for our post-pandemic recovery. And so I think globally, we have seen the center of gravity shift decisively towards the adoption of digital technologies. Having said that, the digital dividends, I think they coexist with the risk of a digital divide. Again, something that is the topic of this panel, and also something that all of us are very aware of. And I would say the digital divide, in a sense, manifests itself. It is both an urban-rural divide. It is also a developed country, developing country type divide. And also, even within developed countries, I think we are seeing a divide. And that divide occurs because of a variety of factors. The first set of factors is really around awareness. The second is around access and affordability. And the third is around knowledge and skills to use them. So effectively, we need a collective response from governments, the private sector, and the people sector in order to mount a credible effort to bridge this digital divide. Because ultimately, if we are to reap the dividends of a digital economy, we have to ensure that a digital divide is minimized, if not eliminated, so that everyone feels that they're a part of this digital future. So I would say the efforts to ensure digital inclusion, it itself has to be an inclusive one. And by that, I mean, it must involve all parties, clearly the public sector and governments, because of the overall responsibility we carry for the outcomes in our society and our economy, but also for the private sector, because it is not just the pursuit of the corporate goals of individual organizations, but how they contribute toward a larger enabling conducive environment. And finally, I think the people sector, because we have to nurture ground up initiatives. And on that score about being inclusive, I just wanted to share something that we have embarked on in Singapore. We call it the Digital for Life movement, because digital is something that is a lifelong endeavor. And digital also can make a profound difference in our lives. And what we have done through this is really to embark on a nationwide movement, catalyzing efforts by individual corporations, by ground-up volunteer-led initiatives, and of course, government-supported programs. For all of these to converge, to synergize, and to contribute towards this larger effort of bridging the digital divide. So I think if I can summarize my point, essentially, the digital divide is a global challenge which we must take seriously as we do the challenge that digitalization poses to our competitiveness from an economic point of view. Because if we do not address this social dimension, then I think we will be the poorer for it, and we will not be able to fully realize the benefits of a digital future. And we want to ensure that this effort is an inclusive one, where all parties come on board to ensure that everyone has a role, companies with capabilities, workers with skills and knowledge, and individuals, citizens with the knowledge and awareness to thrive in our digital future. I'll pause there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Minister. Vinita Sethi, Senior Vice President and Chief Public Affairs Officer at the Polo Hospitals Enterprise, India. Vinita, your take on how can we collectively drive this systemic transformation?
Thank you, Sasha. And I think Minister Easwaran, thank you for those very wonderful observations to set the tone. Now, just taking the cue from what Minister has said, let me just say that what the pandemic has done has kind of topsy-turvied the world and it has compressed what we were looking at as 8 to 10 years of transformation to just 6 to 8 months. Now, as we are all grappling with the adversity, what is amazing is that window of opportunity that it has brought for us. Exactly what Minister has said. This is time for us to make using digital tools healthcare inclusive, affordable, with better outcomes. It is time for us to move to the new paths of healthcare. Healthcare is all about data. Healthcare is all about crunching that data to get pathways that can be used by machine learning, artificial intelligence, and not just telemedicine. And it frees up the doctors to really hold the hands of patients and give them the real care. So I think what is happening now with the COVID pandemic is that we are realizing that there is a way for us to partner, not just public-private partnerships, but for the tech experts to speak to health experts, to not work in silos, but to work together. So, I'm talking of use cases where technology can now really help us analyze data better, analyze what non-communicable diseases have caused the epidemic. Just like the epidemic, these have been put on a back burner. But go forward, we'll have to bring back all the health. We'll have to go to remote healthcare. What we are seeing is that almost we have now the capacity to deliver 25% of healthcare through remote. We have in the global digital healthcare a huge jump, which we can see from about 140 billion to 235 billion by 2025. I'm just seeing numbers here. Of whether everybody is empowered to use digital health tools. Do we have enough connectivity? Do we have enough broadband? And most important, both on the supply and demand side, on the supply side, do we have the digital skills of our workforce to now leapfrog into digital health care delivery? On the demand side, do our people have enough resources to access digital health? See, today we can no longer say that a company A is digital and a company B is trying to be digital. Yes, we are trying to be digital, but today all companies are becoming digital. And this is going to be irreversible. So I think here is an opportunity to really transform the way we deliver healthcare. And it's not just about technology. It's about working together. It's about co-creating partnerships between governments, between private sector, between the NGOs, governments, private sector, and to empower the people to use those technologies. So I think what we're talking of, for example, in the World Economic Forum Medicine Alliance, which has come out so timely, to combine all these together to see how the digital can play the leveraging role across industries and help tech experts, marry their expertise and talk to the industry experts to create models which will empower the beneficiaries.
Thank you so much, Vinita. Bokar Bhatt, Chief Executive Officer at Samana Telecommunications Council. Bokar, what's your take on how to drive this transformation, how to make sure that it's also inclusive, of course?
Thank you very much, Sasha. And I will echo what has been said by His Excellency, the Minister, and also by Vinita. First of all, allow me to say that it's my pleasure to be here today and to support the Edison Alliance and the World Economic Forum in prioritizing digital inclusion. And digital inclusion, or as we say, participation by all, is absolutely critical in making progress on these sustainable development goals and to effectively respond to multiple calls that we have seen for collaborative actions that has been launched both by not only the World Economic Forum, but by many other stakeholders and entities. Now, two things that we have realized so far over 2020 and the beginning of 2021. Number one, we have all witnessed the essential role that access to connectivity and access to digital services at large have played and are still playing during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's the first thing. The second one is we have also realized that the COVID-19 crisis is likely not our last crisis, and more are sure to come. So what we are in now is unlikely to be just very long exceptional circumstances, but it is likely to be the new normal. So we have to live with that. In In revealing today that access to meaningful broadband connectivity is a must, the crisis has also laid bare our systemic and structural weaknesses and increasing inequalities within and between the countries. As you have mentioned at the beginning of your talk, exacerbated through the persistent digital divide, still not everyone is connected or has the privilege to access essential services from the comfort of home. 47% of people are still excluded, and this exclusion is accelerated in a crisis such as COVID-19, when offline services are no longer available. So the issue we are still facing more urgently than ever is how to connect the remaining 47% of the population that is still offline, whether they are not covered by infrastructure on one side, or sometimes covered but not connected because they don't have access to sufficient capacity infrastructure, or whether they face adoption barriers as mentioned by His Excellency the Minister. So coming to your question very quickly, with our global aspiration of achieving universal digital access and to materialize meaningful connectivity, it is important to first account for the digital gap that do exist. And because we want to leave no one behind, we must identify those gaps. We must be vocal about their impact if left unaddressed. And we should also implement recommendations that have been given by the World Economic Forum. The systemic transformation requires a very well orchestrated action. And I will summarize it in 4 different actions among the different and diverse group of stakeholders. It requires some very fundamental elements. We need to be using the same language. Our priorities should be aligned between the different stakeholders. We must be innovative in how we effectively engage with each other, and I'm referring to partnership. And importantly, how well we set measurable targets, because we need to have targets to be able to go to the next step. So the participation gap that we are trying to fulfill requires investment, and no one group or entity can meet this requirement of funding. We are talking about $428 billion to remain to connect the remaining 3 billion people who are unconnected. We need to ensure that digital transformation is inclusive and generate equitable outcomes in the long run, which means that all stakeholders that benefits from the broadband infrastructure must also contribute in a more sustainable and predictable way. And last point, we need also from a private entities come up with new approaches for funding, financing, and investing, and that required a long-term inclusive local value enhancing digital transformation and strike a balance between the different digital ecosystem stakeholders that will benefit from this advanced network. And I will pause there. Hopefully it answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're gonna talk a bit more in details about that. But first, let me ask Minister Iswaran. I would like to ask you. You've mentioned the Digital for Life movement, and I would like to ask a little bit more on that one, and also on the concept of not only digital inclusion, but what you call also digital readiness, because you said that now more than ever, digital inclusion is a matter of national priority, and this readiness as well. Could you tell us more about that?
Thank you, Sasha. Let me just contextualize it. The key thing is that when we are talking about digital inclusion, as Bokar and Vinita have mentioned, I mean, we can look at it from different perspectives, but it's not just about access in terms of the technical access, because even if the technical access exists, can people afford it? And it's not just about affordability, because even if it's affordable, then you have the question of, do they have the wherewithal to use it? in terms of the hardware, in terms of the knowledge and the software. So we need to bring it all together in order to make this effective. So when we say digital readiness, it's not just about the availability of hardware or systemic capacity. It's also the individual and enterprise capability to use that capacity for their benefit. And the Digital for Life movement that I mentioned, essentially, and I think this is the point that both Bokar and Vinita have also endorsed, really, we need to make sure all stakeholders come together, because it's not a case where businesses think that this is the responsibility of government alone. Because if we do not embrace digital inclusion as an essential part of our evolution as a digital economy, the space for the digital economy will shrink, because there will be more people who feel that they're left out, and that will lead to schisms in our society. And therefore, the Digital for Life movement that we have started really brings together different threads. What the government has been doing, also what some private sector has been already undertaking, whether it is the tech companies and some of our SMEs. But we have also brought in the community-led initiatives. We've got students from universities who have embarked on programs to teach young people how to be smarter netizens. We have got startup community efforts which are looking at taking laptops and making them affordable and accessible for lower income families and so on. And we want to bring all of these together and catalyze more of this. Because if I go back to the point I made earlier, digital inclusion is integral to the digital future, but achieving digital inclusion must also be an inclusive effort, because all stakeholders must recognize its importance, the point about an alignment of interest that Bokar talks about. And we need to make sure that alignment of interest results in aligned activities at the national level.
And let me also ask you on this, when it comes to this, to the readiness, to be ready and to have this inclusion, of course, one of the factors that goes there inside, alongside the others, as you say, the affordability and the access in all senses, that would be, the other one would be as well skills, because now more than ever we can say that skills are clearly the currency of the future and even of today already.
Yes, indeed. So I think when we talk about being able to use the technologies and inclusiveness, right? If I talk about the enterprise domain, SMEs, the small businesses, they need to be given or help to acquire the capabilities so that they can use these technologies, right? It's not just something that the large companies do. So this inclusiveness includes small and medium enterprises. Then for workers, it's about enabling them to acquire the knowledge and skills, not just on a one-off basis, but on an ongoing basis. And for this, again, in Singapore, we have a national program, both aimed at our SMEs. We have an SME Go Digital program. And then we have what we call the Tech Skills Accelerator program, which is essentially to build skills in our workforce amongst our workers for the digital future. And then finally, I think at the individual citizen level, you need, again, an effort to raise their awareness, comfort level, and knowledge. And so, for example, just to illustrate one of the things we're doing, we have a program called the Seniors Go Digital program. So it's aimed at those who are in their 60s and 70s, whom sometimes we may think, not always justified, that they may not quite be as digitally savvy as everybody else. But the effort here really is to bring them into this digital society and empower them to be, users, effective users of digital technologies.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we have all seen how the COVID-19 situation and the whole pandemic over the past year has made it so important, more important than ever, to make sure that everybody is included, nobody is left behind. Vinita, let me ask you about digitalization and healthcare, because of course, when it comes to where we are now, 1 year since the beginning of the pandemic, the COVID-19 has been driving digital adoption across all sectors, but particularly with the healthcare. And I know you've got some examples of when it comes to Apollo and, for example, monthly active users of apps.
Yes, so I'm just going to talk about this in a context of 3 points. One, companies, for example, like Apollo, had invested in technology much before the pandemic happened. And that really helped us navigate the pandemic better. How? We were immediately able to get a risk surveillance app out to the citizens. Even before the others came, our risk surveillance app was helping people sitting at home to get into the algorithms we had built into it and see what was their risk of having contracted COVID. This helped us immediately to triage patients. Patients need not come to the hospital, but they were able to teleconsult with us. So what we saw was an immense sum, and I've got a figure of almost month-to-month increase in active users of the app in the first 3 months was almost 15 million people. And we reached nearly 440 cities across the country with our risk app. Now, this means that we had already tapped with our online Apollo teleconsult app, which was Apollo 24/7, a large remote care market, but the kind of usage we saw because of the pandemic was immense. Now, here are the 3 points on how we can really, going ahead, empower and use the digital technology for our citizens and for our people globally and nationally. There are 3 considerations. Again, as Minister Easwaran said, it's not just about creating technology, it's about co-creating it with our people. So we have to look at 3 parameters. One is accessibility. What digital healthcare tools help us do is access those areas which were far-flung and were not really being able to access health. There are many villages in India where people have to walk almost 20 kilometers to the first super specialty or a secondary or a tertiary hospital. Second, it's a question of affordability. There's a McKinsey study which says that there is an economic gain of almost 11% in terms of saving healthcare costs when you go digital. And the third thing which I would like to really mention is how it is improving the quality of the outcomes, how it is improving compliance. And I'm just going to quote some of the clinical studies we have done at Apollo. We have seen that almost 50 to 54% of people in case of diabetes are not complying with the prescriptions. We have also seen people, which is the percentage is as high as 65% with cancer who come into a hospital in stage 3. Now, what is digital going to do for them? It's not just about the COVID pandemic. And let me tell you what COVID has done, unfortunately, is also made us slip back on the progress we made in non-communicable diseases like diabetes, hypertension, cancer. India has had a huge rise of diabetes. We are almost the diabetes capital, unfortunately, of the world. Now, with an app that we are going to come out with, which we already have and improvising, the Sugar app, it gives alerts to people to take their medicines on time, to go for their test, to monitor their blood sugar levels. Similarly, in case of oncology, we have embedded biomarkers, which tell people it's all about genetics. It's all about personalized medicine, that, hey, you have to go to the hospital, especially the women, to get your cervical cancer test done now, if you've had a history or not. So what digital is going to do for us is going to make citizens understand, more aware of a preventive and a proactive approach to healthcare. Healthcare is not about getting people to hospitals. Healthcare for us now with digital and even without it was having people stay in their homes, ultimately get well, and from their homes be able to access ubiquitous health applications, be able to, access if they've got a pacemaker, get it monitored from the comforts of their home. At the same time, Apollo 24/7, for example, has got an integrated pharmacy. We are working on platforms which are going to be so relevant in the days ahead to get access and integrate systems to have universal healthcare, which is a goal of sustainable development, at the doorstep of every man and every woman. So this is how digital will empower our people. And just to close this, it's not just about, getting technology, it's about how we are able to skill our people. So Apollo, for example, has invested in future of skills. And we have almost have 7,000 of our doctors and nurses who have signed up so that, everybody need not be a coder. They don't have to develop codes. A doctor and a nurse has to understand how this particular algorithm or a robotic surgery can be brought in. They can give a problem statement to the technology expert and get the correct algorithms for us to work with our patients. So that's where I'll end.
But in this case, Vinita, do you see also the current situation? Because of course, you've mentioned that there are so many other issues, and when it comes to healthcare, diseases and so on, that of course had to be addressed and had been addressed also before the pandemic. But now with the COVID-19 really accelerating this digitalization, how do you see this providing proper skills and making sure those skills that they're in place and they're ready to go nowadays, because we have to accelerate that happening?
Absolutely, and this is the truth, that we've had a huge shortage of workforce skills and workforce gaps across healthcare in India, and I'm sure in many other developing countries and even developed countries. And COVID has laid bare the facts that they were the most developed countries with the most well-developed healthcare systems who fell short of nursing staff. So to answer your question, we have been investing in skilling initiatives. But the point is, you can't fix the bridge when there is a crisis. You have to prepare to have a good bridge. So we are therefore investing in skills, both through digital means, and especially through digital means like we did during COVID. We immediately got a simulation program, online skills, where we tied up with the Boston Children's Hospital and other places in the UK for mechanical ventilator usage. And now we've converted it into a course, through our Medversity, which are an Apollo Skills. We are offering these skill courses to enhance the skills of our people. Then similarly, we have a huge shortage of super specialists, of tertiary health providers. We also have a huge shortage of general duty assistants. So we are investing, we are making people get into online skilling programs. And this is critical now because we're running things like digital dispensaries. We are running things like telemedicine and emergency centers in mountains. So there's no way where people can go to physical units to get those skills. So it's an important part of this is to work with the government. Our government has a very dedicated infrastructure for national skill development. And we also have a national digital health mission program. So these are all integrating with the private sector, where we are creating the skills for future in healthcare.
Bokar, and that's the question which I would like you to pick up, please, on the importance. You said earlier that no one, when it comes to closing the digital divide and addressing this, no one can do it alone. What policies and practices and partnerships are needed to drive this digitalization? Also, how can we foster this deeper collaboration when it comes to the whole ecosystem?
It's you are giving me a very tough question, Sasha.
I know.
But it's I would consider it as the continuation of the first question you asked me earlier. Number one, we have heard Minister Iswaran. I think when we contextualize this discussion, someone has to champion, someone has to take the lead. We need to have a champion that will lead the approach in terms of partnership and in terms of collaboration. What am I referring to? We have spoken about the digital environment. We have addressed the readiness, but we also have to ensure that we will address the usage. The dynamic digital environment today requires banking on everyone's strengths and expertise. We need to create an enabling environment whereby latest technology, we've seen Vinita in the health sector was referring to investment that they have made before. Number one, we need to have the digital network. In our case, in the Middle East, most of the Arab countries are 5G enabled network, where we have the entire infrastructure. And from that infrastructure, we need to activate those new technologies. I am referring to cloud-based information. I am talking about artificial intelligence. I am talking about big data. We need to do some data analytics. We are connecting object, IoT, I'm referring to that as an example. So this is the ecosystem where we are in. Based on those technologies, of course, we have different stakeholders. We have the academia, the private sector, we have the government. We need to engage together, and everyone has in this partnership to get something out of the partnership. I personally do not believe that people will be willing to be engaged if they don't get anything out of that. So government has KPIs and objective for providing well-being to the society at large. The private sector has an interest on, of course, getting a sustainable business with predictability and affordability for the consumer. And we also have the digital player in this ecosystem, and I'm referring to the very large internet companies, the Google, the Amazon, the Facebook, and others. Now, when we prioritize the three focus area that the Alliance, and I'm referring to Edison Alliance from the World Economic Forum, is addressing in 2021, are currently, I believe, the most impactful and urgently needed one, given their direct correlation with our social well-being. The sooner we foster an understanding of the evolving social value structure and digitally driven social ecosystem, the faster and more effective we will be in collaborating meaningfully. The minister was referring to the elders that we wanted to connect. I can see in some countries in Africa, some people above 75, they say, for example, I have nothing to do with internet. We have to make internet meaningful for them. We need to stimulate the usage. It's not only about uplifting the skills, but ensuring that internet is going to change their life. And the best example that we have today are in the health sector and in the education sector, where we have all our children connected to be able to go to school. Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you so much. Minister, I would like to follow up on that one with you on the importance of creating and enabling the fruitful and the correct infrastructure, network, and environment. And how does it work for you when it comes to taking that lead towards that direction?
Thank you, Sasha. So let me just build on the point that Boka made and also Vinita illustrated with some specific examples. I think what we have seen in the last 12 months is that, prior to COVID-19, etc., there's always been an effort for digitalization, certainly 3-4 years before, and even before that. And I think what we have seen in the last 12 months is this decisive digital pivot from an economic point of view. And so the economic imperative has been something that has been widely accepted. Now, you don't have in Singapore, we describe it as it's gone from being a nice to have to a must have, and in fact, it's gone from nice to have, good to have, need to have, and then now it's a must have kind of thing. So that economic digital pivot must be matched by the social digital pivot. I think that is key. So I would say that we must use this opportunity to do, and I think if I can summarize it, I would say the 3 A's. The first is, and I think this is where the World Economic Forum and the Edison Alliance and these sorts of conversations are very important. The first is we need to firmly put digital inclusion, the bridging of the digital divide, on the agenda for governments, on the agenda for boardrooms, and on the agenda for communities, because we need this multifaceted approach, and it starts with prioritizing it in terms of our efforts. The second is, I think we need these agenda to translate into action. In other words, actionable program steps. And that's where what we have done is there's been a multitude of these efforts occurring in different parts of our country. And we try now to give it a cohesion and a national impetus through the Digital for Life movement. And the third A is alliances or partnerships, as Boka calls it. You need those alliances because this is something which no one party can fully address, but every party has an abiding interest in. So when you talk about, for example, the whole area around skills and knowledge, whether it is in the healthcare space, whether it is in the economic space and so on, you see, the key is it's not a one-shot deal, you see. And that's why I'm saying it's important to put it on the agenda and sustain it on the agenda, because we embark on it today because there's a pressing need. Everybody understands its importance and its relevance. But when we emerge from this crisis and we go back to a new normal, whatever that might look like, how do we then continue to sustain this? Because the digital economy and technologies that facilitate it are going to continue evolving. And we need to make sure that our understanding of it, its impact on our society, and the skills we need remain current, and they are matched in tandem by our efforts to imbue our population with that capability and skills.
Thank you so much. So when it comes to digitalization, of course, we have seen absolutely unprecedented acceleration over the past 12 months. And indeed, we moved from something that is good to have to totally a must have. But also, as all of our speakers said, and to sum up it now together with you, in order to close that digital divide, it is not only about accessibility, not only about affordability, not only about skills. It is also about addressing all of those issues, identifying and addressing all of them, but also addressing them not alone, and doing that in partnerships and in alliances to make sure that we are here and ready for the new normal, whatever it's going to bring us. And for the closing remarks on this session, I'm pleased to give the floor to Tarek O'Halloran, Head of Shaping of the Future of Digital Economy and New Value Creation, World Economic Forum.
Thank you so much, Sasha, and thank you to all of the panelists. Thanks, Minister Iswaran and Bokar and Vanita, not only for your time and contributions today, but for your leadership through the Edison Alliance. Look, I think I would just like to wrap up, maybe summarize a couple of the pieces that we've heard consistently through the discussion, Sasha, and maybe highlight a couple of points around the Edison Alliance. I think what we've heard very consistently through the course of the last 45 minutes is, number one, that COVID-19 has really helped us understand that we do have a challenge in terms of digital connectivity and digital inclusion. We've understood much more clearly why this is important, and that we really need to tackle this if we want to make sure that we are building cohesive and inclusive societies going forward. Increasingly, I don't think there is a difference between saying digital inclusion and just inclusion. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, we've started to understand a little bit more about the nature of the challenge. And as we've heard through the discussion here this morning, yes, it may be that 53% of the world's population connect to the internet today, but actually over 80% of the world already live within coverage of the internet. And so the issue is not just one of infrastructure, but the issue is one of the availability of relevant services, the affordability of those services, and the trust and the confidence that people have in being able to use those services. In order to tackle this, therefore, we've heard again and again, no one can do this alone. And we need to tackle this together. We need to tackle this in a systemic and holistic way. And in order to do that, we need those innovative cross-sector partnerships at scale and to be sustained through time. And this is exactly why so many of the leaders came together, including our members of the panel today, but now, in fact, 40 champions have come together to join an alliance to not only put this issue on the agenda, but to demonstrate what success looks like. As all of the panelists have started to indicate here today, it's a very, very diverse group that has come together with people across financial services, whether that's MasterCard, Western Union, from healthcare, Apollo Hospitals who's on today, Jefferson Health in the US, really underlining the point that this is a challenge not only for developing countries, but as you highlighted at the top, even developed countries have affordability and adoption issues. Same from other sectors, investors, technology entrepreneurs, a number of countries joining with ministerial representation. Minister Iswaran here today, but also from Indonesia and Colombia and South Africa, Rwanda. And really the purpose here is to create this enabling environment for exactly the agenda, the action, and the alliances that Minister Iswaran so eloquently referred to. It really exists to amplify and accelerate the excellent work that's already going on out there, to connect the dots and to help people role model and demonstrate what successful partnerships look like. And as we go forward, there are three key levers that the Alliance is focused on. Number one, it is on learning by doing. So it is on creating those partnerships, whether it's at the global level, the national level, city level, state level, or even in communities, to demonstrate what it looks like when we really bring holistic digital service ecosystems into the lives of communities around the world. Secondly, to capture and codify what are some of those policy playbooks that people can replicate and learn from. So Minister talked about Digital for Life and a number of the other programs. Are there things there that other countries can learn from and replicate very quickly? And then thirdly, it's about unlocking capital and financing at scale. We've heard the numbers earlier, the investment shortfall here to tackle not just the infrastructure, but the broader set of challenges here in the order of 428 billion. And BOCAR, in fact, has been chairing a working group with the Broadband Commission, and will shortly be publishing a set of recommendations around how globally we can start to tackle that investment gap. And so we're looking forward to taking that and building on that work as well. So that's it from myself. Sasha, back over to you, and thank you very much again to all of the panelists.
Tarek, thank you so much, and thanks so much to all of the speakers and to everybody following this session. It's been a great pleasure to moderate it, and it's been great to have those closing remarks again from Darren on the importance of working together in order to solve some of the most important and burning issues. Thank you.